So in our previous screencast, we looked at how misleading information can affect the accuracy of eyewitness testimony. However, in this screencast, we're going to look at anxiety because, as we noticed in last lesson, one of the issues with research into the accuracy of eyewitness testimony is that it very often takes part in the lab where things like emotions that you would experience at the time are missing. So anxiety is obviously something which is quite often present when people are witnessing crimes, and therefore it's quite important that we understand how this can affect the accuracy of eyewitness testimony as well. So anxiety is often present during witnessing crimes, whether it's a car crash or whether we're looking at something like armed robbery, or in fact most crimes will involve anxiety to one degree or another. And the research into how this can affect the accuracy of eyewitness testimony can actually be quite contradictory. So some research will actually suggest that as anxiety levels increase, so does the accuracy of eyewitness testimony. However, other research suggests that as anxiety increases, the level or the accuracy of eyewitness testimony actually decreases. So the question is, how can we explain these contradictory findings? And the way we do that is using what's called the YatesDodson inverted U hypothesis, which is a curve that looks something like this. Now, what this hypothesis suggests is that as a person's arousal level increases, in this case stress, if they're looking at a crime, then the accuracy of eyewitness testimony also increases because people become very aware, hyper aware of what's going on around them, so they're more likely to pick up on key details. However, this increase in performance only happens up to a certain point, and beyond that point people become so stressed and they lose focus on what's going on around them that the accuracy of eyewitness testimony actually then decreases. Now, one particular aspect of anxiety is called the weapons focus effect, and this is seen whenever there's the presence of a weapon within a crime, and it's something which was investigated by Loftis in 1987. Now, in Loftis' study, she had two conditions. So in both conditions, participants were invited to come in to take part in a psychology experiment, and when they arrived, they were taken to a waiting room and asked to stay there until the study could start. Now, unbeknownst to them, the research at this point had actually already begun. Now, those participants in condition 1, they could overhear two people talking in the next room. Now, this conversation was just a normal conversation. I think it was about a photocopier being jammed. And then when the conversation had finished, one of the two Confederates in that room left, and he was holding a pen which was covered in grease. Now, those participants in condition 2, they heard something very similar, but instead of hearing a normal conversation, they overheard in the other room a heated argument between these two people. And then when the Confederate left, he was holding a letter opener and it was covered in blood. Now, once this had happened, all participants were shown an array of 50 photographs, and they were asked to identify the Confederate who had walked out of the room. Now, the results showed that those in condition 1, so those who had heard a normal conversation and seen someone walk out with a pen covered in grease, were able to pick that Confederate out of those 50 images 49% of the time. However, in condition 2, where they'd overheard a heated argument and then the Confederate walked out carrying a letter opener covered in blood, they were able to identify that Confederate only 33% of the time. So from this, Loftis concluded that when there was a weapon present in a crime situation, someone's focus becomes so focused just on the weapon rather than on the individual carrying the weapon that they're then less likely to be able to identify the criminal in that case. So before you come into the lesson, make sure that you can explain why eyewitness testimony studies carried out in a lab may lack ecological validity. You should be able to describe the two possible effects of anxiety on eyewitness testimony, so that's using the YatesDodson inverted U hypothesis, and explain why both of those effects could be correct. You should be able to explain what we mean by the weapons focus effect and also outline Loftis' research into the weapons focus effect. Obviously, you can go back to the pre-reading. There's more detail on all of this in there, or watch this screencast again if you need a bit more help.